The alarms blared, and Dr. Aiden Westbrook found himself facing an unimaginable challenge. A towering Reiner war commander, once the epitome of strength, had arrived at his station, pleading for help. But something was horribly wrong. The commander's body was mutating, shifting into something unrecognizable. His once unshakable mind was unraveling, and the galaxy's most feared warriors had come to kill him. With time running out, Aiden realized that this wasn't just a battle against an unknown disease. It was a fight for survival, and if he failed, Kalros would become a threat to the very species that created him. But there was one terrifying question. Could he stop the transformation before it was too late? Or would Kalros become something the universe could not control? If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Dr. Aiden Westbrook stood by the window of the research station, gazing out at the endless stretch of barren land that surrounded the facility. Varen was a remote planet, far from any major galactic conflicts. The station's purpose was simple: research. For years, Aiden had been content with his quiet life here, away from the chaos of war and politics. But today everything was about to change. The silence of the station was broken by the sudden blare of the alarm. Sharp, urgent, unmistakable. Aiden's eyes snapped to the control panel where a red warning flashed across the screen. Unauthorized. Vessel has docked. Species Reiner. High-ranking individual requesting immediate medical examination. His heart skipped a beat. The Reiner. A warrior race known throughout the galaxy for their brutal strength and relentless nature. They never asked for help, especially not from humans. Aiden's hands hovered over the console as his mind raced. The Reiner were always at war. They never showed weakness, never sought aid. Something was terribly wrong. Without wasting another second, he scrambled to grab his equipment, preparing himself for the unknown. Who could have known that today? He would meet a Reiner commander? The heavy door to the station's medical bay hissed open. Aiden's eyes widened as the massive figure of a Reiner war commander stepped inside. The man, if he could even be called that, was over 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in battle-scarred armor. His red eyes burned with intensity, but there was something strange about him. He moved slowly, almost sluggishly. His once smooth, leathery skin was cracked and discolored in places, as if something had taken a toll on him far beyond the usual scars of war. The commander's second-in-command, a smaller but still imposing figure, followed closely behind. His sharp gaze scanned the room, constantly alert, and his hand rested near his weapon, ready for action. Aiden swallowed hard. The tension was palpable, but it was clear that this was no ordinary visit. This was a request for help, but not just any help. It was something much more urgent. "You need medical help," Aiden said, trying to steady his voice as he met the eyes of the commander. The Reiner commander nodded, his breath heavy. "Yes," he said, his voice strained, "and you must not tell anyone." The second-in-command shifted uncomfortably at those words, a flicker of distrust in his eyes. Aiden caught the glance, understanding the unspoken warning. The commander's own people didn't trust him anymore. Aiden motioned to the examination table. "Sit," he instructed, his mind racing. The commander lowered himself onto the table with a grunt of pain. Aiden grabbed his scanner, running it over the warrior's body, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The readings on his screen were chaotic, far beyond anything he had encountered. It wasn't just an injury. Something deeper was happening here. As Aiden scanned the commander's body, he noticed something unsettling. The commander's hands were shaking. The Reiner commander, a man known for his unyielding strength, was trembling. That alone told Aiden that whatever was happening to this warrior was far worse than any battle wound. This was not just physical damage. This was something internal, something that couldn't be fixed with a simple medical procedure. The scanner beeped, its readings flashing across the screen. Aiden's brow furrowed in confusion. The Reiner were one of the most biologically stable species in the galaxy. Their bodies were designed for war, tough, resilient, and practically indestructible. Yet the data in front of Aiden made no sense. The commander's biological structure was shifting, changing in ways Aiden had never seen before. "What's happening to you?" Aiden whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The commander's red eyes flickered briefly, a strange shade of blue flashing behind them. "I am changing," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "Changing into what?" Aiden asked, his voice tight with concern. The commander's gaze flickered again, and for a moment, there was a flash of fear in his eyes. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I fear what I will become." Aiden stared at the commander in disbelief. Reiner warriors did not show fear. They were known for their stoic resolve, their ability to conquer anything that stood in their way. But here in front of him was a warrior who was not only showing fear, but was begging for help. This was something no one had ever expected to see. The second in command stepped forward, his expression unreadable, but his body language was tense, his hand still close to his weapon. "We need to fix this," he said, his voice low. "Before it is too late." Aiden glanced at the second in command, then back at the commander. The weight of the situation was starting to sink in. This was not just a simple medical emergency. This was something much larger, something far more dangerous, and whatever it was changing the Reiner commander in ways that even Aiden couldn't comprehend. As the tension in the room grew thicker, Aiden took a step back. His mind raced through all the possibilities. What could cause a Reiner warrior to undergo such a dramatic change? Was it a virus, a biological weapon, or was it something far more insidious? The scanner beeped again, its readings growing even more erratic. Aiden's stomach twisted as he realized that whatever was happening to the commander, it wasn't just a disease. This was a transformation. And if he didn't figure out what it was soon, they would both be facing something far worse than any of them could imagine. Aiden's mind raced as he stared at the readings on his scanner. The commander's body was changing, and the changes were unlike anything he had ever seen. The Reiner were known for their resilience and biological stability, but now, the commander's genetic structure was deteriorating at a rapid pace, shifting into something unknown. "This can't be right," Aiden muttered to himself, his fingers flying over the controls as he tried to make sense of the data. Every time he ran the scan, the results were worse. The commander's DNA was unstable, breaking apart and reforming in real time. The cells were mutating, reprogramming themselves at an alarming rate. Aiden had seen plenty of genetic anomalies in his career, but nothing like this. "What's happening to me, human?" the commander Calros asked, his voice deep and strained. Aiden glanced up at him, trying to maintain his composure. "I'm not sure," Aiden admitted, his voice tight. "But this is not an injury. It's something else. Your body is rewriting itself." Calros shifted uncomfortably on the examination table, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and fear. "I feel it," he said softly. "My body. It's changing. I can't stop it." Aiden looked at the second in command, Leos, who stood near the door, his eyes watching the scene carefully. The tension in the room was palpable. Leos had been silent for most of the examination, but Aiden could sense the unease radiating off him. The second in command clearly didn't trust him, and Aiden didn't blame him. After all, this was a Reiner commander who had come to a human for help, something that was unheard of. "How long have you been like this?" Aiden asked, trying to focus on Calros's condition rather than the tension in the room. Calros's eyes flickered for a moment, as if recalling a memory. "It started after the battle with the Vorlan," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We were winning, but then they unleashed something, a weapon. It changed everything." Aiden's mind churned as he processed Calros's words. The Vorlan were an enigmatic and ruthless species, known for their use of biological warfare. Aiden had heard rumors of their twisted experiments, but hearing Calros speak of it firsthand made his blood run cold. "What kind of weapon?" Aiden asked, leaning forward, his curiosity and concern growing. "I don't know," Calros replied, his voice heavy. "But it wasn't a virus. It was something more. Something that rewrote our biology, made us less than we were. I saw my men fall on the battlefield only to rise again no longer themselves. They were monsters. They attacked their own kind. They didn't even recognize me. Aiden's stomach turned as he tried to imagine what Calros had witnessed. The thought of a biological weapon that could turn soldiers into mindless killers, stripping them of their identity, was terrifying. And now, Calros was experiencing the same fate. His body was changing, mutating into something new, something he couldn't control. You came to me because you don't know what's happening to you, right? Aiden asked, his voice gentle but firm. Calros nodded slowly, his eyes locking onto Aiden's. Yes. I fear what I will become. I don't want to lose myself like the others did. But if I can't stop this, I will become something else. Something not Reiner. Aiden swallowed hard. He had treated many injuries, diseases, and mutations in his career. But this was different. This wasn't something that could be fixed with medicine or surgery. This was a transformation, an unraveling of the very essence of the commander's being. The Reiner were warriors, strong and unyielding, but this was beyond anything Aiden had ever seen. The scanner beeped again, its readings flashing, wildly. Aiden's heart sank as he studied the data. The molecular bonds in Calros's body were unstable, like a fragile thread about to snap. The transformation wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. The commander's cells were mutating faster than ever, and Aiden had no idea how to stop it. You need to fix this, Calros said, his voice filled with desperation. Before it's too late. Aiden felt a surge of urgency. Calros was right. If this transformation continued, it would be a death sentence, but Aiden didn't know how to fix it. He had no comparison, no precedent to guide him. This wasn't just a disease or a virus. This was a complete breakdown of the commander's biological makeup. And if he couldn't find a solution, Calros would lose everything, his identity, his strength, and his life. We need to slow down the mutation, Aiden said, more to himself than to anyone else. If we can stop it from progressing too quickly, maybe we can figure out how to stabilize it. Calros's eyes flickered with something that resembled hope, but it was quickly replaced by uncertainty. How do you propose to do that? He asked, his voice low. Aiden ran his hands through his hair, his mind spinning with possibilities. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I'm going to find a way. The room fell silent as Aiden's fingers danced over the console, searching for any possible solution. He thought of human adaptability, of how humanity had survived and thrived under conditions that seemed impossible. Perhaps there was a way to adapt this mutation, to slow it down, to give Calros the chance to regain control over his own body. But as the minutes ticked by, Aiden realized the truth. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have an answer. And the weight of that knowledge pressed down on him. Calros, the mighty Reiner warrior, was slowly unraveling before his eyes, and Aiden didn't know how to stop it. The situation was growing, more desperate by the minute. Aiden stared at the readings on his scanner, his hands trembling slightly. Calros's condition was worsening, and with each passing second, the transformation became harder to ignore. The once powerful Reiner commander was now a victim of a fate he couldn't control, and Aiden was caught in the middle of a battle he didn't fully understand. Calros sat on the examination table, his breath heavy and labored. His body trembled, slightly, his muscles twitching in ways that didn't make sense. His skin, once smooth and leathery, was now scarred, cracked, and slowly changing. The red hue of his eyes flickered, replaced by an unnatural shade of blue, almost as if something inside him was awakening. I can feel it, Calros whispered, his voice strained. The change, it's not just physical. It's in my mind too. Aiden felt a cold shiver run down his spine as he looked at the commander. Calros had always been a symbol of strength, a warrior who had led his people through countless battles. But now he was no longer the same man. His mind, his very essence, was being twisted by the same transformation that was altering his body. Aiden couldn't help but wonder, What would become of Calros if this continued? How long do I have? Calros asked, his voice quiet but filled with urgency. Aiden swallowed hard, not wanting to give an answer. The truth was, he didn't know. Everything he had tried so far had only slowed the mutation for a brief moment, but it was still spreading, breaking down the commander's body at an alarming rate. The fear in Calros's eyes was impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a battle against an enemy. It was a battle against time, against a force they didn't understand. I'm trying everything I can, Aiden said, his voice steady but his mind racing. But I'm not sure how much longer you have. We need to figure out what's causing this, or it could take everything from you. The second in command, Laios, stood at the doorway, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. He hadn't said much since they arrived, but his presence was a constant reminder that not everyone trusted Aiden's ability to help Calros. Laios's distrust was obvious. His eyes never strayed far from the doctor, and Aiden could feel the weight of his suspicion. You cannot save him, Laios said coldly, his voice carrying a tone of finality. The mutation is irreversible. You are wasting your time. Aiden turned to face Laios, trying to remain calm. He understood the Reiner warrior's concern. After all, Calros's transformation was unlike anything they had ever encountered. But Aiden wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. You don't understand, Aiden said firmly. This isn't just a disease. This is something else. Something that's changing Calros in ways we can't fully comprehend. If we don't find a way to stop it, it will consume him, and I won't let that happen. Laios's gaze narrowed, but he didn't argue further. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably, his hand tightening around his weapon. It was clear that he had lost faith in Aiden's ability to help, but Calros's life was still in his hands. Aiden turned back to Calros, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision ahead. He needed to figure out what was happening. What had caused this mutation in the first place? If he could just find the right piece of the puzzle, there might still be a chance to reverse it. You said the transformation started after the battle with the Vorlan, Aiden said, his mind racing through the possibilities. Tell me more about the weapon they used. What was it? Calros closed his eyes as if the memory pained him. His voice was soft when he spoke, but the words were heavy with the weight of his experience. The Vorlan used something biological, a weapon that alters the very structure of life. It's not like anything we've ever seen before. It doesn't just kill. It changes the body, the mind. It turns you into something else, something worse. Aiden felt a chill run through him as he processed Calros's words. The Vorlan were known for their cruel and twisted experiments, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. A weapon that didn't just kill, it transformed the victim into a monster. Do you think this is a result of that weapon? Aiden asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Calros nodded slowly, his eyes dark with fear. Yes, the weapon was designed to break us, to make us weaker. I saw my men fall in battle only to rise again as something unrecognizable. They lost their minds, their will. They became nothing more than puppets. Aiden's mind raced as he processed the information. The Vorlan had created a biological weapon capable of altering the very fabric of life itself. And now, Calros was suffering the same fate. Aiden had always prided himself on his ability to understand and solve problems. But this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The idea of fighting against a force that could rewrite someone's DNA, their very essence, was terrifying. We need to slow down the mutation, Aiden said, more to himself than anyone else. If we can halt it, we might be able to buy enough time to figure out how to stop it completely. Calros looked at him, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and desperation. Do what you must, he said, his voice barely audible. But hurry. Aiden took a deep breath and turned back to the scanner, his fingers moving quickly across the console as he attempted to find a solution. The data was still unclear, still chaotic, but there was a glimmer of hope. He had to keep trying. As Aiden worked, Calros's body continued to shake, his muscles twitching and convulsing in a way that shouldn't have been possible. The commander was losing control, but there was something else, something deeper happening within him. Aiden could feel it, a subtle shift in the air. Calros was no longer just a warrior in need of medical help. He was becoming something else, something unknown. "I'm not sure I can fix this," Aiden said, his voice thick with frustration. "But I'll try, we're running out of time." Calros met his gaze, and for the first time, Aiden saw something in his eyes. It wasn't just fear. It was determination. The same determination that had driven Calros to become one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy, and now, that determination was turning inward as he fought against the transformation that was threatening to destroy him. "Do what you must," Calros repeated, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "But know this, if you fail, there will be no turning back. I will become something worse." Aiden nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The battle wasn't just against the mutation, it was a battle for Calros's very soul. The clock was ticking, and Aiden didn't know how much longer they had. But he couldn't give up. Not now. Not when the fate of a warrior and his people depended on him. The real battle was just beginning. Aiden could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Calros, the once mighty Reiner war commander, was now standing at the precipice of something far worse than death. The transformation that had begun in his body was accelerating, beyond anything Aiden could have imagined. His muscles were twitching uncontrollably, his eyes flickering with an unnatural glow, and his mind was becoming a battlefield of its own. Aiden had spent hours trying to stabilize him, but it was clear now that they were running out of time. The door to the medical bay hissed open, and Laios stepped in, his hand resting on his weapon. His gaze was cold, filled with suspicion, but there was also a hint of fear in his eyes. Fear of what Calros had become. The tension between the two warriors was palpable, and Aiden knew that this situation was spiraling out of control. "You've failed," Laios said, his voice low and steady. "The commander is lost. It's only a matter of time before the mutation overtakes him. We should put an end to this now." Calros, who had been lying motionless on the examination table, suddenly stirred. His breathing was labored, his body shaking, but there was a fire in his eyes, one that Aiden hadn't seen in him before. He wasn't just a warrior anymore. He was something else, something neither Reiner nor human. "You will not end me," Calros said, his voice strained but filled with authority. "I am not finished yet." Laios raised an eyebrow, his hand inching closer to his weapon. "You're not the same anymore, Calros," he said. "You've become something else. You've already lost your place among us. The warriors will not accept you as their leader anymore. They will see you as a threat." Aiden watched the exchange with growing unease. He knew the Reiner warrior code: strength, dominance, survival. Calros was no longer fitting that mold. The mutation had changed him, and now, even his own people would see him as weak. The irony was not lost on Aiden. Calros had always fought for strength, but now that very strength was being tested in ways no one could predict. "They will kill me then," Calros said, his voice colder now. "And if they do, it will be on their own hands, but I will not go quietly. I will not let them destroy me, and I will not let them destroy the future of my people." Laios clenched his jaw, his posture tense as he shifted his weight, ready to make a move. "You cannot change what you have become. No one will follow you anymore. The Reiner are built on the code of war, not evolution. This new version of you, it's a weakness." Calros's eyes flashed red, and for a brief moment they flickered to that unnatural blue. The transformation was becoming more pronounced with every passing moment. His muscles were no longer merely reacting. They were adapting, shifting, forming into something far stronger than they had ever been. His breathing steadied, and his body, once faltering, now exuded an eerie calm. "You still don't understand," Calros said quietly, his gaze fixed on Laios. "This is not a weakness, this is a new strength. And if you cannot see that, then you are just as blind as the others." Before Aiden could respond, the doors to the medical bay slammed open once again, and a dozen Reiner warriors poured into the room. Their armor clanged loudly as they advanced, weapons drawn and eyes filled with suspicion. Their leader had returned, but they could see the change in him. Calros was no longer the same. He had mutated, his body and mind altered in ways that made even the most battle-hardened warriors uneasy. "Kalros, you have kept secrets from your own people," one of the warriors, Kodan, growled. "And that is not the Reiner way. You must be purged." Kalros stood slowly, his towering form casting a long shadow over the warriors. His eyes locked onto Kodan's, a cold, calculating fire burning in them. "Purge me then," Kalros said, his voice a low growl. "But know this, if you strike me down, you will have to face something you do not understand. I am not the same. I am more." The warriors hesitated, unsure of what to do. Kalros wasn't just a leader now, he was something different. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, his muscles rippled with unnatural strength, and his movements were too precise, too calculated. It was as if every fiber of his being had been optimized like a weapon forged to perfection. "He's no longer Reiner," Kodan said, his voice tight with fear. "He's a threat. We must end him before he becomes something worse." Kalros stepped forward, his claws flexing as his body seemed to ripple with newfound power. He moved faster than any of them had expected, his body almost a blur as he struck with precision. In a single fluid motion, he disarmed Kodan, sending his plasma weapon clattering to the floor. "You do not understand," Kalros said, his voice now resonating with something deeper than before. "The VTH thought they could break us. They thought they could turn us into monsters. But they failed. And now, I am something they could never predict." Aiden watched in awe as Kalros's transformation became undeniable. The warriors who had once followed him now saw him as a threat. But Kalros was still in control, still the leader. He had become something beyond Reiner, beyond any species in the galaxy. And he knew it. "You are not the same," Kodan said, his voice shaking with disbelief. "You're something else." Kalros's crimson eyes glinted with a strange, unnatural blue, and he smiled, the expression almost predatory. "And that is exactly what I intend to show you," he said. "The future of the Reiner will not be about strength alone. It will be about evolution, about adapting to the new world we are entering." The warriors stood in silence, their weapons still drawn but their resolve faltering. Kalros had just proven something that none of them had ever imagined. He was no longer just a warrior. He was something far more dangerous, far more powerful. And that was exactly what they feared. Aiden could feel the shift in the room. The warriors were no longer sure of their place in this world, not when their commander had evolved into something beyond what they could comprehend. They had always believed in strength through war, through dominance. But Kalros was showing them that strength could come from something more. The battle was not just about physical power anymore. It was about proving that change could lead to something even greater than before. Kalros was not defeated. He was evolving. The moment of truth had come. Kalros stood tall, his claws retracting, and his breathing steady. The warriors, uncertain and afraid, lowered their weapons one by one. They had seen the change in their commander, and whether they liked it or not, Kalros had won. "This is not the end," Kalros said, his voice resonating with an unshakable confidence. "This is only the beginning." As the warriors left, leaving the medbay in uneasy silence, Aiden realized that Kalros had just done something no one thought possible. He had not only survived the transformation, he had taken control of it. And in doing so, he had proven that even in the darkest moments, evolution could lead to victory. For Kalros, the real battle was just beginning. But this time, he wasn't fighting for survival. He was fighting to lead his people into a new era, one where strength was no longer defined by war alone, but by the ability to change and adapt. And for Aiden, the truth was clear. Humanity had just earned a place in a war that would change the galaxy forever.